What's up, everyone? All right, well, here we are. It's Thursday morning. I am currently sitting in the green, up $21,780.51. That's 4 times the daily goal. This shirt has paid for itself. It's a lucky shirt. It wasn't cheap, but it's been worth it. I wear it now every single day. I don't know how long I'm going to keep it up, but anyways, so we do have something a little funny going on, though. Right now we have two stocks, both up. One of them's 138%, the other's 119%. No news. What is the deal with that? So typically what I like doing is trading stocks that have breaking news. If yesterday you watched my recap, you may have heard me talk about my 5 pillars of stock selection. I'll put the link, I'll pin it to the top of the comments here and in the description for this video too. So you can download it, you can print it out, and you can use that as a resource every single day as you're trying to evaluate what you're looking at and what has the potential to make a big move. These 5 pillars for me are essentially, they create a profile for the type of stock that can make the biggest intraday move. And we're talking about not just 20, 30%, but 50, 100, 200, 300, 400, 500%, or 2,000% like we had last week on drug. But one of the things I like to see generally as one of those pillars is that the stock has a news catalyst. Now, there are a couple of exceptions, and I think we have some of them happening right here today. So one of the exceptions is on EFSH when you have what's called a technical setup. It's purely technical, and this is a dead cat bounce. Now, forgive the language. I know felines. Put the earmuffs on. This is some rough language here, but you know this is the market. It's there's just the way it is. So we had this crazy move from 150 all the way up to nearly $10. Sold off, came down, and now we're bouncing off the low. They called it dead cat bounce because if you throw a cat out a 100-story window, let's imagine this is a 100-story window, it's probably not going to survive, but it will bounce a little bit, right? I mean, just think about the physics of it. Think about the physics. So here we go all the way to 150, and then we're bouncing off the low. Now, is this still dead? Probably. It's not, Is it going to go back to here? Probably not. There's no actual news catalyst to support the move. There's no news. It's just bouncing. It's a technical bounce. But here's the thing. Because this is a stock that went from $2 to $10 in one day, and this might have also been on no news, actually, for what it's worth. Now, don't quote me on that. I have to double check it. We'll double check in a second. That was on October 18th. Because it did that, traders look at this as it's the type of stock that has the potential to go up 50, 100% easily in one day. So if we go back to the 18th, so there was no news on that day either on EFSH. So it went up this much on no news, which is really the effect of it's a lower float stock. It's had recent reverse splits, and it's basically, coming into this pop that happened last week or whatever it was on Monday, it was basically at all-time lows. So in a hot, frothy market, a stock at all-time lows with a float of less than 1 million shares, when it starts to catch a bid, suddenly people are jumping in it and off it goes. And in a really hot market, now people are trading it just because it's moving. So I didn't end up trading this for 2 reasons. Number one, primary reason was because I was already up $21,780 coming into the open. And if you recall last week, every day last week, 4 out of the 5 days last week, I gave back profit after 9:30 opening bell, as much as 20% on one of those days. So last week, if we're going to be real, it wasn't so great. My metrics weren't very good when we looked at it past 9:30. I'll just show you right here. So let's see. So we'll do calendar here for a second. So calendar for October, currently sitting at $275,000 on the year. I should tell you, my results are not typical. I've been doing this for a long time, so I don't want you to assume that this is a typical result. This is actually my best month of the year, so even for me, this is not typical. So I haven't imported yesterday's trades or today's yet, so it's actually going to be up over 300. But let's look just at last week. Let's just look at month to date. That's just easy. So this month. All right, so this month right here, we'll look at detailed. And we're going to look at days and times. And what you're going to see is that I've been doing really well pre-market. And then boom, all of a sudden, 10 a.m. to 11, 12, not doing well. Got a couple nice trades later, but nothing significant. So based on that, and this was especially bad last week because just last week I had one day where I had some pretty substantial losses past the opening bell. No, actually, where is that? Yeah, it was right there. $24,000. Ugh, yikes. Now, I still had a good week last week with 200 grand, but would have been better without that. So because of that, I told myself this week to be more disciplined. And so I was kind of walking around my office here. I was getting stuff organized. I was just tidying up some cables and just sort of puttering around. I had the audio alerts on. And you know what? I didn't come over to check to see what was triggering the audio alert. And next thing I know, EFSH was halted up. Let's see, where was it halted up? By the time I sat down, it was halted up right here at 255. And I thought, well, so I clearly missed this pullback right here, which was a pretty nice one. So since I missed that, I don't know. I'm not sure if I'm going to, and it's going up with no news. I don't know. So it ends up going up to 320. It drops down to 280, pops back up to 340. Then it pulls away, halts up, opens, dips. And I was like, I'm not going to buy it after the second halt because it has no news. Rips up to 4. Now goes up to a high of 460. And now we're kind of pulling back a little bit. So I said to myself, I better record this recap right now so I don't get FOMO and end up buying the top, because that's something that I've done before. So this was EFSH. It peaked at, let's see, what was the highest percent on the day? 182% on no news. Holy smokes. That's quite something. All right, so big move, no news. Is it realistic to buy this dip and expect it's going to go higher? Probably not. You've got a big red candle, shooting star, topping tail, high volume red. It's a reversal. Now shorts could get trapped, and next thing you know, longs buy it up because, the market's hot. So it could happen, but it doesn't really make a lot of sense for that to happen. So then the second stock is TC. TC went up also over 100%. And this one's so funny because at the open, this thing halts up on super light volume. It halts up right here on 72,000 shares at $1.80. It opens and squeezes into a second halt at $2.80. It opens and goes up to 4. It then drops from 4 back down to 3 and then rips back up to a high of 429 before now coming back down to 321. Again, pay attention to that MACD. When you get that MACD crossover, time to step back. EFSH probably also has a MACD crossover happening. Let's check. So EFSH crossovers right here. Now, naturally, you should have gotten out of this a lot sooner than waiting for the crossover. But once the crossover happens, it's an indicator to probably leave it alone. ZCAR, another one with a lower float. Now that you've seen EFSH squeeze up, would ZCAR go as well? Again, without a news catalyst, probably not. But on a day like today when the market's a little frothy, maybe. So now let's talk about the trades that I took today. All right, so we're going to go back to the first trade of the day, and that was on SAG. This was an IPO from yesterday, SAG. IPOs and squeezes up yesterday from, let's see, opened at about 6, sells off, pops up, whatever, and then into the close squeezes up to 8. Pre-market 4 a.m. punches up to 860. I got in right here on this break of VWAP. That was first trade. This down here was second trade. I did not take the third trade because after this, I was like, you know what? We're seeing a lot of topping tails. I think I'm not going to overstay my welcome. So thank goodness I didn't take that trade because that one reversed. But I got a nice trade here at 7 a.m. and another nice trade right here. And what was interesting about this one was when it started to squeeze up right here, coming into the open, I saw it was on my scanners as a gapper. So I thought, okay, it's a gapper. Doesn't have fresh news exactly. It's an IPO. So usually that you're not going to have news on day 2. But again, that's a technical setup, so that is an exception. I'm okay with that. The float, I checked it. It's pretty low. So no issue there. Technically, it's a technical setup. So I was fine with that. But the problem was it was showing 750 on the ask, and the bid was showing, gosh, what was the bid? It was $7. So we had this kind of big spread. I'll have to pull up my whiteboard here. Let me just refresh this camera. So we had this larger spread on it. And when you have a big spread like that, usually I feel like I'm not going to be able to manage my risk. I'm just like, if I get in at 750, I'm instantly going to be down $1 a share. And then all of a sudden it's 730 by 750, and then 740 by 750. And then it was actually as tight as 747 by 750. So someone was bidding higher and higher. And so I said, you know what, I'm going to get in. I got in at 750. It goes to 775, goes to 8, goes up to 825, goes up to 850. I waited for the spreads to tighten up before getting in. The spreads tightening up indicated to me that someone out there was wanting to buy shares of the stock. So anyway, so got a trade on that. That was my first trade on SAG. That was just after the top of the hour, 7 a.m. And then I got another trade a little bit later as it was curling for the break of VWAP. I'm just reconnecting this camera. Sometimes it disconnects. So those are my two trades on SAG. At the open, when it popped up there, I was wondering if it was going to retest 9, but unfortunately with these topping tails, it's just not quite enough strength. Okay, so that's SAG. That was my first trade of the day. Second trade of the day. Second stock I traded after SAG was, let's see, TVGN. That's right. So TVGN. Okay, so on this one, yesterday, this broke the 200 moving average. It squeezed up to 3 on 150 million, about 100, well, let's see exactly, 135 million shares of volume. So this morning when it started popping up right here, I was like, okay, I'm going to take a trade on this. Now that I already had a cushion on the day, I bought 15,000 shares, first trade, added to 20,000. It squeezes up from 330 up to 340, 350. Boom, I'm taking the profit off the table. Locked up about $2,500 scaling out of that trade. I was pleased with that. I thought that's not bad. So that was right here. Getting in on, let's see, we had a micro pullback somewhere right in here. And then we got that squeeze up to 340. I was hoping that we would go higher, but that was it. So got that one trade on TVGN, sold off at the open. So now I'm up a little over, right around 10,000 on the day. So then the next trade after that was Zena, Z-E-N-A. I'm up about 1,100 on Zena. Not a lot to show for this one. The interesting thing with this was I kind of botched my first trade on it. I got in a little too late. It pops up right here, as you can see, to 270. It dips down to 250. I got in at 250 at the $0.50, but I missed, getting in like down here. That would have been the nicest candle. So we end up hitting a high of about 280, but then look at that rejection back down. And unfortunately, I added up there for the break of 3, and then we rejected. Then we did an interesting inverse kind of head and shoulders pattern here, and we squeezed back up. I got back in for the break through the high and made a little bit, but it just didn't really give me that big win or that explosive move I was hoping for. So that was Zena. Nothing super exciting on that. Took a bunch of trades on it, but whatever. Next one, BOF. Now, BOF is kind of interesting because after the move on Zena, which I felt like I missed, when BOF popped up, I got in that as it broke 250 right here, bought as soon as it hit 250. And I was thinking, if it hits 250, I'm looking, because this just came from 2, for a move up to 3. It goes through 275, I add, and I'm looking for the squeeze to 3. It ends up hitting 3, and I take some profit. Hits a high of 310, which was good. 310 was the high. It dips back down, but then that was it. It didn't hold up. And note, highest volume candle was red. So now at this point at 8:30, I'm like, I don't like to see that reversal. And it had news, right? But the news was a little earlier. So it had news at 7, starts to squeeze at 8:30. So, I was like, if this is kind of the trend of popping up and reversing, I'm going to have to ease off and slow down because I don't want to get caught in a nasty flush. So then the trades after that, after 8:30, I really slowed down. I was like, I'm not sure if I'm going to get more. I got a small trade on Peggy, P-E-G-Y. This is a stock that made a big move last week, you might recall. So sort of a dead cat bounce on this one as well, actually, but it had fresh news at 8:35. So it is a bit of a bounce, but also with a news catalyst. Goes from 450 to 6. Ended up making $2,200 on that move. Not bad, but again, it didn't hold up. So now I'm getting sort of even more reaffirmed that I better be, and I took that one with smaller size. And so I was like, you know what, we're just moving in the wrong direction. Then I saw NXU. I jumped in this at 57 cents, which is very cheap. I don't usually trade these. That was right here. It ends up pulling back. I stopped out for a small loss. Comes back up, but I, of course, didn't hold that for that drop. So that's the one that I'm red on. It's a little outside my price parameters, but smaller size. Only bought 5,000 shares of that. So lost like 3 cents. Not a big deal. And then had that last trade on SAG coming into VWAP. A couple more trades on Xena and then SGD. This one had news and I took with small size, made only $366. And at that point I was just like, yeah, I don't want to push my luck anymore. So then of course, that's what's funny about that is then EFSH makes this huge move and I don't trade it at all. I didn't trade it at all. It makes this huge move and I get nothing. TC also makes a huge move. I got nothing. So that was kind of surprising. I sort of thought, this trend, like we weren't seeing these holding up. We weren't going to continue to see bigger and bigger moves. And then, yeah, I don't know. So a little bit funny today. A couple no news moves actually were better than the ones that had news, which is unusual, but it is what it is. So locking up the profit here, $21,870 or $780. It's a great day. Thank you for the person on the YouTube comments who said, Ross, what if you look at your last 90-day average? You say your daily goal is, $5,000 a day, which it is. It's $5,000 a day. So I'm at 4 times the daily goal here, right? My daily average is 6,500, but I set the goal at 5,000. Now, if we look at last year, all of last year, my daily goal was $5,000. But how did I do last year? 1,800 daily average. I came up short steadily, like every month. There were a couple of stretches, but I just consistently came up short. But I set I couldn't possibly reduce the goal. I was like, the goal is 5,000. I'm not reducing it. That would be admitting defeat. I'm not going to do it. So the goal is still 5,000, that's what it is. And I got stubborn about it, but refused to change it. Now, if we look at this year, well, let's just look at year to date. So year to date, I've been averaging, I think, about 5,500. Solid year. So I've been hitting the daily goal. But in the last 90 days, so the comment was, Ross, what if you just look at your profit for the last 90 days and use that as your daily goal? That way, when the market's colder, you kind of reduce the goal, and when it's hotter, you increase the goal. I said, that's not a bad idea. So I said, well, let's check to see what the last 90 days daily average is. And that's when I saw daily average closer to 10,000 for the last 90 days. So I thought, it's interesting. Should my daily goal right now be 10,000 a day? That's double what, I typically would have. And yet, that's what I've been averaging. And of course, I've done that today. So, or more than. So maybe I should be pushing myself a little bit and thinking about it a little bit more in the shorter, even just last 30-day context. Last 30-day average is 15,000 a day. And I'm above that today. So I think there's something to be said for that. If you're thinking about sort of performance and trading, as a performance career in a way, I think about like racing, ski racing. When you're racing skiing, you might have a day where, you're going to have different trails that you're doing the race on, right? So your best time for one trail is not gonna be the same as your best time for another, just because they're different. They're totally different. And then you have weather variables. Well, the weather's terrible. It's kind of sleeting, or the snow's warm, it's slushy, you're gonna be slower. So, you've got these variables that, it's gonna affect everyone for the most part. So if you keep trying to hold yourself to a standard that you achieve during peak performance conditions or whatever, you're just going to be let down, like again and again. And on the other hand, when things are really hot, that is the time to hold yourself a little bit higher. So I don't know. I say all that. I did ski team when I was younger, but anyways, I don't know. I think that there is something to being a little bit more present with the current market for thinking about what the realistic daily goal is. But I also, yesterday I was up 6,000 and that was really the best that I could do. I didn't feel like I could get much more than that. And I don't think it would have been right for me to try to push to get to 10 or 15,000 just because that was my new daily goal. So it is somewhat arbitrary. At the end of the day, I'm going to trade. Like when I hit the daily goal, I don't stop trading. I'm going to be as aggressive as I can on a day that's hot. And I hit the daily goal in my first trade like I did today on SAG. Am I going to walk away at 705? No, no way. That's the type of day where I can triple, or 10x the daily goal potentially. We got a couple more good stocks because that's what happened. All of a sudden, I've got a nice cushion on SAG. So now I can take more risk on BOF and TVGN. And I could take more risk on everything across the board. I could take bigger size because I know even if I lose, I can still walk away at least with my daily goal. And that's a really nice position to be in. I can't take $10,000 of risk on the first trade. But if I'm already up 15 grand on the day, I could take 10,000 of risk. If it pays off and I make 20,000 of profit, that was worth it. Absolutely. Now, when we look at my metrics, you could see, I think I closed that window. My profit loss ratio this year is something that I'm really proud of. So this year I've maintained one of the best profit loss ratios that I think I've ever had for a calendar year. So year to date right now, profit loss ratio is $645 average winner, 480 average loser. Now the accuracy is a little lower this year, but the profit loss ratio is better, and I like that a lot. We look at last year, and last year, $500 average winners and $600 average losers. So the average losers last year were 50% higher, and the average winners were more or less, they were, what was it, year to date? The average winners were like 10% lower. So, I would, if I was going to choose one or the other, having my winners be 10% higher or having my losers be 50% lower, I would definitely want the losers to be less. So the big problem last year was the losers were too high. It was hurting my profit loss ratio. So I had an inverted profit loss ratio, losers bigger than winners. And although I was right 67% of the time, I made less money. Now I also traded a little bit less. Average daily volume was lower. Total number of trades was probably lower. I was at 2,200 trades last year. Year to date so far this year, I'm already at 4,000. So there's been, and I'm more than twice the amount of profit. So, there's just been more opportunity this year, which is good. If we did January 2022, just out of curiosity, I'll just do to December 31st here. So this profit loss ratio, $814 winner, $900 loser. Did about $1 million gross profit, but inverted profit loss ratio. Accuracy 69%. But again, that profit loss ratio. Now 2021 had some record breaking days in 2021. That was when we had GameStop. Average winners, again, 2,200, which is a huge number. Average losers, 2,500. Inverted profit loss ratio. So just slightly, but inverted. And even back in 2020, let's look at 2020, the best year of my entire career. That's where we get back to a positive profit loss ratio. $1,600 average winners, $1,500 average losers, and 71+% accuracy. That was my high watermark. I may not ever get back to that. Or it may not be for 5, 10, 15 more years before we have a market that has that level of volatility. And then you go back to 2019, which was like the calm before the storm. 2019 was a really slow year. And profit loss ratio there, $800, $1,100. Accuracy 70%, $445,000 in profit, right? And there weren't as many opportunities. This was all sort of pre-pandemic. 565,000, 1,000, 1,000. 1-to-1 profit loss ratio, 68%. So, I look at this data quite a bit, and, it just helps me kind of better understand what I'm doing that's working, what's not working. And what I feel right now is working quite well is my strategy of starting the day with smaller size and then increasing once I have profit. And if I don't have profit, not increasing size. So although I've had a couple bigger losses this year, this one was back in February, I think it was. Really got smoked on this one. We had one of these stocks that just all of a sudden started spiking up, and I was like, here we go. And then it did a full round trip. It's just unbelievable. So, whatever, it happens. But in any case, this year for the most part, I've been able to keep those losses tighter. And certainly if we look at, let's look at like May. Yeah, May, we take out that one big loss. That's even better. July. Yeah, so it's pretty solid. So anyways, continue to focus on the metrics. This sort of helps guide me to what I need to do, the time of day I need to trade, what's working, what's not working. And, I'm hopeful that we continue to see this hot market, prevail. I mean, these days have been among the top 15, top 20 highest revenue or, highest profit days for me of the year. Right? I mean, this has been really, these days have made a huge dent in the year. This is my year to date. So, well, actually, no, year to date would be, I don't know if it'll show me the whole year to date. It only goes back 90 days. But anyways, you get the idea. Things are starting to really pull away. Another green day today. So let's keep it up. All right. So thank you guys for tuning in. I hope you download the 5 pillars of stock selection, and I'll see you, as always, for the next episode. Reminder, trading is risky. My results aren't typical, so take it slow, manage your risk, and always practice in a simulator before you put real money on the line.